Well, hello everyone. Good to see you all and good to be in your company. Thanks a lot for joining us at the Coach's Corner and welcome to yet another program on the Australian Open. And this time we will be talking about a review of the quarterfinals and what can we possibly expect in the semi-finals coming up. So the tournament's about to get over. Wednesday is already done today. And in about 4 days, we will have completed this tournament and crowned our first Grand Slam champions for the year 2023. Certainly a remarkable tournament full of ups and downs, twists and turns, and we are bringing them to you, basically talking about the results and, of course, some opinions and analysis, and doing as best we can to try and provide you updates from this tournament. Now, of course, we will talk about what we can expect in the semi-finals, but we're going to start off with a few headlines. First of all, we're going to focus on the fourth seed and 9-time champion, Novak Djokovic, who has in fact won his match. Obviously, he won his quarterfinal, and it's as if every single match he's played ever since the early rounds has been a lot more dominating. Reaching the semi-final, sweeping aside the fifth seed Andrei Rublev in a devastating display. At times he was a bit of a frustrated figure, but he was able to channel his emotions well into a ruthless 6-1, 6-2, 6-4 win over the Russian Rublev in Melbourne. The fourth seed again had his left thigh strapped, and he will play Tommy Paul in the last four on Friday, and we will talk about Tommy Paul later on. But Tommy Paul, 25, ending the American college wonder kid Ben Shelton's surprise run to reach a first major semi-final. Now, the former world number one, Djokovic, is the only major champion currently playing in the quarterfinals, with Tsitsipas, of course, having been a runner-up twice, I believe, in the French Open in another tournament, and he is also favourite for the title, as he chases a record equaling 22nd Grand Slam and does look like potentially going beyond Rafa Nadal this year in terms of the number of Grand Slams won, and almost certainly, if he is able to win another French Open and another US Open title, he will have won all three majors at least three times. All four majors at least three times. Beating Rublev, of course, was his 26th consecutive win at Melbourne Park, equaling the Open era streak recorded by the American legend Andre Agassi. I couldn't be happier with my tennis, playing solidly from the back of the court and loved the conditions. And on the days between matches, he hasn't practiced very much. Important to be smart and wise with the body in these circumstances, where it's more important to recover and get ready for the next challenge. So, obviously, those years of experience and years of winning, pretty much second nature for him. He did look close to his best in the dominant win over Alex de Minaur in the fourth round, but obviously, the way he was able to demolish Rublev, who was of higher pedigree, the fifth seed, of course, let's not forget, was even more impressive. And much of the talk had been centered around Djokovic's hamstring injury, and racing through another victory seems to be the best way to protect the problem. Rublev does have one of the most powerful forehands in the game, but Djokovic's precise and incessant returning was always going to unsettle him in many ways. And it's fair to say that Djokovic was quite happy with both his performances against de Minaur and Rublev, calling them the best performances of the tournament. The one against de Minaur 2 nights ago was obviously better for him, but only because he lost fewer games, I would say. The scoreline in the first two sets against Rublev doesn't really tell the truth of the close games we had. All the important moments I played the right shots and the right tennis. That's what pleases me the most, and that's often how you win tennis matches, by winning the big moments. It's the same way for almost all sports, really. Basically, being annoyed by a heckler during the sixth game, and didn't really disrupt his rhythm. Took Rublev's serve for 5-1, allowing him to serve out the opening set only after seeing off 2 break points. And Djokovic still didn't feel at his best, and he had to have an exchange with his coach, former Wimbledon champion Goran Ivanisevic, early in the second set. A Serb and a Croat working together. Now let's keep politics out of it. And whatever was said worked, with Djokovic winning the next 7 points to move a break ahead and take control again. He fought off 2 break points of 4-2, and Rublev being broken in the next game pretty much was the straw that broke his back. Having lost all 6 of his previous major quarterfinals, and facing Djokovic as he aimed to end that run was the last thing that Rublev wanted. And obviously he had joked before the match that he wished he was on the opposite side of the draw, but then it just came, he just ran into a buzzsaw, really. Djokovic is that sort of person who probably believes that it's now or never for him, although technically he is, he's not too old to be fair. In fact, I definitely say that given his age, he should have more than a few years of competitive tennis in him. If we find out how old he is, he's 35. So he could technically, with his fitness, play for another few years at least, and maybe go on to sort of achieve a lot more. The only problem is, of course, all the years of having to, power through your shots, land on a certain spot. It can take its toll on your legs and your lower back more often than not. And we're seeing with Nadal how he's struggling with injuries and how Federer himself was, overcome by the injuries and had no other option but to retire. Federer will always, of course, have his place in history as the first person to win 20 Grand Slam titles. Nadal, of course, has his place, but Djokovic can still overcome them both. And it's good to see him challenging his energy into something more positive, because a lot of us will remember, of course, during the US Open, I think it was, how he smacked a tennis ball in anger and it hit the ball girl. And he ended up being expelled from that tournament. So you could say that he's older and a lot wiser. And of course, the same match we'll see. I mean, not the same match, the same headline, of course, the same over here. We see that Tommy Paul will be his opponent. And as mentioned, he had beaten Shelton on the Rod Laver Arena 6-7-6, 6-3, 5-7, 6-4. So it was a pretty interesting game, quite tough, almost nothing between them. And Paul is, of course, quite experienced, ranked world number 35, whereas his 20-year-old compatriot is still taking online courses from the University of Florida and, of course, was the NCAA champion before coming to the tournament. Paul will, in fact, be the first American men's semi-finalist at the Australian Open since 2009. He reached the 4th round of the major for the first time at Wimbledon last year, and previously hadn't moved beyond round 3 at Melbourne Park, but further extending his best-ever slam run against a big serving world number 89, who was bidding himself to become only the 4th man in the Open era to reach a semi-final, winning his first 2 Grand Slam appearances. Making it to the second weekend of a slam is, of course, everyone's dream, so I can't believe I'm here right now. And Shelton, of course, had never left the US before traveling to Australia. Shelton, of course, is the son of former tour professional Blake, who was at one point ranked world number 55 and won a couple of ATP singles tournaments. A year ago, he was ranked outside the top 500 rather, and arrived in Melbourne with no expectations. Obviously, he fell 2 sets down against a more consistent Paul. He was able to seize his chances in the third, battling back from a breakdown to force a 4th set. But Paul restoring order with an immediate break of serve, confidently serving out the biggest win of his career after Shelton forced him to do so by saving a match point. So obviously, Shelton has now sealed his place as one of the breakout stars of the Australian Open. And we could even check out this particular headline here. Yep. First trip outside the US, got his passport about a year or so ago. And of course, he was still playing for the University of Florida college team. And actually, it wasn't Duke Shelton. I've got him confused with a basketball friend of mine. His father, Brian, was a former professional on the ATP Tour. And this fella, Ben Shelton, only got his passport in 2019. And His only previous major appearance at a major was a first-round defeat at last year's US Open, for which he had earned a wild card by winning the prestigious National Collegiate Athletic Association title in May. And then, of course, he shocked world number 5 Casper Ruud at the Cincinnati Open. That was sort of after turning professional. So obviously, turning professional, he was no longer eligible to play collegiate tennis, but is still taking online classes to finish his degree, and hopefully he will get it. Taking 2 online classes, in fact, and working on assignments while he's at tournaments. And obviously grew up playing a lot of different sports: basketball, soccer, baseball, falling in love with American football. He was a quarterback, played for 6 or 7 years, could have been the next Steve Young or Michael Vick, given that he was left-handed, but he didn't want to play tennis because he thought that it was dad's thing, but eventually he chose to play tennis, and now it was a decision that he doesn't regret in any way. So definitely a bright future for him. Might need to improve on his consistency, but he's definitely announced his arrival. Now we're going to go over to Tsitsipas. Simply sensational or superb Tsitsipas. Pretty poor form. I do apologize for that. So, Tsitsipas and Khachanov to meet in the semi-finals, defeating Jiri Lehecka in straight sets to set up the final between the both of them, reaching his 4th Melbourne semi-finals with a very impressive straight sets win, 6-3, 7-6, 6-4. Lehecka had been one of the surprise packages of the tournament, having beaten 2 top 12 seeds to make the quarterfinals, including Felix Auger-Aliassime and Cameron Norrie. Those were, in fact, the 2 top 12 seeds and had never won a Grand Slam match. And going to take a look over here to see more highlights of more analysis of this match. So he had, in fact, beaten, as I said, Cameron Norrie and Felix Auger-Aliassime. But the world number 71 looked a bit nervous in the opening exchanges with the 3rd seed, who was ranked 4th in the world. And the Greek dominated the first set after breaking his opponent's serve early on, but was pushed hard by the Czech throughout the second. And Tsitsipas did take control of the tie-break, racing into a 4-0 lead before seeing it out. And in the 3rd set, he had to save 3 successive break points at 3-3 before making his move on Lehecka's serve at 5-4 down to wrap up the win on his first match point. Calling it a fair dinkum performance, certainly feeling at home in Australia with a large Greek diaspora and Greek community there. Most important thing is that he was able to find a solution, and he called it a difficult 3-setter, one of the most difficult so far in the tournament. But like Djokovic, he was able to win the big moments and come out in the pressure situations, and went on to wish his opponent a good career. Fine player. And of course, the head-to-head record between Tsitsipas and Khachanov is rather impressive for the Greek, who has never lost to the Russian in 5 meetings. And if he goes on to win this title, which would be his first Grand Slam title, he could end up becoming world number 1. But it won't be easy, because he could end up being on a collision course for a final with a certain 9-time winner from Serbia. And we're going to take a look now at Khachanov. And once again, I believe I've spelt the name wrong. I do apologize for that. Pretty poor and unprofessional moment. But here we are now. And in the other quarterfinal, the scoreline, of course, sort of reflected the dominance of the Russian. The score, of course, was at 7-6, 6-3, love when Korda had to retire. And he was starting to struggle with his right wrist, having lost the first set, taking a medical timeout midway through the second set. He ended up losing 7 straight games on his return before retiring and walked over to shake Khashanov's hand. Very unfortunate indeed, because obviously the scoreline might talk about how Khashanov was dominating that match, but it doesn't really tell the whole story. Seb Korda, of course, is the son of 1998 champion Petr. Left the stadiums with standing ovation. And Khashanov had some sympathy, saying that it wasn't the way you want a match to finish. And Korda actually had a terrific tournament himself, beating Daniil Medvedev in 3 sets and Hubert Hurkacz in 5. So obviously it was competitive up to a certain point, but the wrist injury did, play its part and take its toll. And now Olympic silver medalist Khashanov is only the 10th active male player to reach the last 8 at all 4 majors and also reach the semi-finals at last year's US Open. Started strongly, but didn't fail to serve out the opening set at 5-3. But then he took his third set point of the eventual tiebreak with a backhand winner. Korda had grown a lot more competitive after that slow start, but after receiving treatment 5 games into the second set, he wasn't able to continue and ended up fading very badly. Swift loss of the set, and a few games afterwards. And Korda did say I had a little bit in Adelaide a couple of weeks ago when he was playing in that tournament, but then it went away. During the matches, it was fine. One sort of mishit return, and it started to bother him a lot. Couldn't even hold the racket, so he had no option but to quit. So it's never a nice thing at all when a player has to retire due to injury, and obviously, he was looking to get into it, and he certainly had an inspired tournament, which would have done his father proud. I'm sure that Seb will have another chance in the years to come, and maybe he could win some titles, definitely. Certainly a chip off his off the old block, if you will, except that Petr was left-handed and Seb is right-handed. But, it is what it is. Always nice to see the tradition continuing. So the semi-final lineups are set on the men. Now we're going to focus on the women. And time for focusing on Victoria Azarenka, the 2-time former champion. She continued her quest for a 3rd Australian Open title, a decade on from her last, by knocking the American 3rd seed Jessica Pegula out in the quarterfinals. So a big, big win for her. 33-year-old from Belarusia, seeded 24th, made a confident start and used that momentum to win in straight sets, 4-1. Pegula was the highest seed left, but now is out of the tournament and will have to wait. And Azarenka will come up against Kazakhstani Wimbledon champion Elena Rybakina, who beat the former French Open champion Yelena Ostapenko from Latvia 6-2, 6-4. Rybakina firing 11 aces and 24 winners as she claimed the dominant victory over the 17th seed. And the Kazakh, who is herself seeded 22nd, was able to wrap up that victory in 1 hour and 19 minutes. But now we're going to focus on Azarenka. Having won back-to-back titles in 2012 and 2013, she's a player who actually thrives in Melbourne and showed it once again as she was able to dismantle third seed, who really wasn't up to par in the match. And the former world number 1 herself was back in the quarterfinals for the first time since she became a mother. And she had given birth to her son Leo in 2016 and reached the last 4 for the first time since her last triumph. But despite her rich pedigree, she doesn't really look back and think about what she has accomplished, instead preferring to create new memories and applying a more forward-thinking approach before the new season, and that approach seems to be paying dividends. Last year, I felt my tennis wasn't bad, but I wasn't mentally ready and played with fear and anxiety. It was difficult to play with courage. I had to work a lot on my mindset in the off-season, challenging myself on things I wouldn't really do before. And when you've achieved the success, you can become conservative and hesitant to try new things. Tried new things, put my head down and worked hard. And as you can see, that hard work has paid off. Aggressive start full of clean hitting, enabling Azarenka to move into a 3-0 lead. And she had lost serve for 5-4, but broke again to clinch the opening set. The second set was even more one-sided, playing at a consistently high level, reminiscent of her best, bringing back memories of those two titles, best part of 10 or 11 years ago. She conceded just 13 points in that set, and Pegula fell at the quarterfinal stage of a major for the 5th time. Of course, once you're out, there's another match you're trying to win. Losing sucks, but the effect of always losing at the quarterfinals didn't have an effect on her, she said. She is still young, of course, and will have to keep trying for another tournament. Maybe the French Open or Wimbledon will be kind to her. As for Rybakina, she's happy to be in the semi-finals for the first time and is the youngest player left in the women's draw. Super happy to have managed the emotions and played really well. She had earned the most prestigious title of her career with her success at Wimbledon, but she had dropped to 25th in the world because ranking points weren't awarded at that major. And she ended up beginning her campaign on court 13 rather than one of the show courts. But then she was restored to the main stage at Melbourne Park and followed up her win over the top seed Iga Swiatek with a devastating display against Ostapenko. All the experience at Wimbledon obviously helped her, and now she knows what to expect. Feeling good on the court, really enjoying every match she's playing. And in the meeting between two of the three major champions still standing among the last 8, Azarenka, of course, being the other one, Rybakina made a confident start as she broke 17th seed Ostapenko's serve in the opening game, set up another opportunity in Game 5 with her powerful shot-making before play was suspended by rain, returning after a wait of around half an hour to clinch a double break lead and ultimately serve out the set under the roof. Ostapenko threatened to fight back with a break at the start of set 2, but Rybakina extinguished those hopes, recording successive breaks in reply to bring her second major semi-final into focus, and ended the match with an ace, currently leading the ace count in the women's tournament with 35 aces. So this is definitely going to be a Titanic semi-final, and we'll talk further about this later on. But we're also going to talk about how spoke about how Rybakina won again. But for Magdalena Linette, with one Pole exiting, who was expected to go further, another Pole who wasn't expected to go too far, is now through to the semi-final. She beat Karolina Pliskova to continue her dream run. The Polish world number 45 had never gone beyond the third round of a Grand Slam in 29 attempts, but she was able to produce a frankly fearless display in her win over Pliskova, a former 2-time major finalist from the Czech Republic, 6-3, 7-5. And she will face another Belarusian, Sabalenka, who beat Donna Vekic 6-3 and 6-2 to reach her 4th Grand Slam semi-final. I'm so emotional. I can't believe it. It really is a dream come true. I'm super grateful and happy. And I will never forget this. This will stay with me for the rest of my life. And of course, there were many people who were predicting a Pole to be in the last stages, but it was Iga Swiatek who was supposed to be expected to be that far. But with Swiatek exiting in the 4th round, being beaten by Rybakina, Linette's best Grand Slam run extended to a 5th win at Melbourne Park as she dispatched Pliskova, who, of course, is another former world number 1. Well supported on the main show court, the unflinching Linette recovered from being broken in her first game of the match to take control of the set, winning 5 of the next 6 games. And if she was inexperienced in playing in the last the second week of a Grand Slam, she didn't show any of that experience, and in fact saved a break point before serving out the set. With Pliskova tossing aside her racket in frustration after dropping her first set of the tournament. And Lynette had, in fact, done quite well, beating the world number 4 Caroline Garcia on her march to the last date, and she was high in confidence, and ended up saving 2 break points at 2-1 down in the second set, and creating 3 opportunities of her own in both the 5th and 7th games as she sought a decisive blow. Pliskova also ended up having a wrist injury, not quite as bad as Sebastian Cordes, but still troublesome nonetheless. And Lynette ended up capitalizing on a break opportunity before serving out the biggest win of her career. Basically, her secret to doing well was that all her life she had been taking mistakes and losses very personally. And now it doesn't seem to be the case, but she says her coaches have done a great job and they put up with a great deal from her. And now, of course, we go to the Belarusian Sabalenka and a possible all-Belarusian final after overcoming a tricky Vekic test. She was both players arrived at the Australian Open quarterfinals unbeaten in 2023, but they struggled for rhythm in a low-quality first set, which had many double faults and unforced errors. Vekic had admitted prior to the match that she had twice considered retiring from the sport after struggling to regain her form following knee surgery in 2021. Her second major quarterfinal and first since the 2019 French Open would mark a significant milestone in her recovery. And it was the big-hitting Sabalenka who ended up claiming the key points to edge a challenging hour-long opener. And the world number 64 just took one of her 10 breakpoint opportunities. Sabalenka, of course, further tightening her grip on the contest with a double break to start the second set before Vekic hit back with a break of her own. Sabalenka quickly extinguished the Croat's faint hopes of a fight back, restoring her double break with a forehand win for 4-1 and overcame 3 break points to serve out the match. Feels quite special to be in the semi-finals. Super happy with the win. And if we were to take a look at this particular tab, hoping to create history by setting up an all-Belarusian contest against Victoria Azarenka. 2 Belarusians competing for a Grand Slam title could likely lead to more discussion about a divisive political issue in sport. Belarusian athletes are, of course, banned by a number of sporting governing bodies because of the country's support for the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. And Sabalenka has previously said nobody supports war and was really disappointed that politics had interfered with sport after the Russian and Belarusian players were banned from Wimbledon last year. So speaking of the prospect of facing Azarenka, Sabalenka said it would be history and it would be unbelievable. And she said that both she and Victoria would do everything they could to make it happen. Sabalenka, of course, has lost all 3 of her previous Grand Slam finals, and she is widely favored to beat Polish Magda Linette, who had never before progressed past the 3rd round of a slam. But of course, as we will discuss, form goes out the window the further you go into the tournament. Now, of course, in tennis, players from Belarus and Russia are allowed to compete, but not on their national flags. Karen Khachanov is through to the semi-finals, but he also won't be under the Russian flag. And the All England Club has not yet said if it intends to maintain its ban on the Russian and Belarusian players at this year's tournament. And both the AELTC and the LTA were fined for banning players last year, and they had their ranking points removed. And Billie Jean King, who won 12 major singles titles, has called for the Russians and the Belarusians to be allowed to play, saying life's too short, just keep it the same way the other ones are. And Sabalenka, of course, was a semi-finalist at Wimbledon in 2021, saying that the impact of those decisions affected her a lot. Still tough to deal with. And Obviously, one can feel a little bit of sympathy for the sports people in question because they have no influence over the country's political decisions. Although I personally believe they can, in fact, at least show some sort of a conscience and maybe exert a bit of pressure and make it clear that they don't support it explicitly. But again, sometimes things are easier said than done. And of course, at the Australian Open, we all know that Russian and Belarusian flags from fans were banned, and we are going to talk about how security guards were threatened after spectators waved Russian flags. The Wimbledon champion Rybakina from Kazakhstan has also had to face questions about the decisions made by the governing bodies. She was born in Moscow, but changed allegiance in 2018 after receiving greater financial support from Kazakhstan. And of course, she's pretty much been mum about the subject, saying she didn't want to say any more about that. And now, of course, we will talk about the controversy of the Russian flags. 4 spectators at the Australian Open had been questioned by police after Russian flags were waved and security guards were threatened. The flags, of course, had been banned by the tournament, but Russian flags, including one with Vladimir Putin's face on it, was seen at Melbourne Park. The police had to intervene after Russian Andrei Rublev's defeat against Serbia's Novak Djokovic, according to tournament organizers. And a fan was also wearing a T-shirt with the letter Z, a pro-war symbol of President Putin's invasion of Ukraine. Portraits show the man being spoken to by an Australian Open official on Rod Laver Arena. So you can see right here, the Z is almost in clear vision. And that man receiving a talking to. 4 people in the crowd leaving the stadium revealed inappropriate flags and symbols and threatened security guards. Victoria police had to intervene and continuing to question them, and are continuing to question them, rather. The comfort and safety of everyone is our priority, and we will work closely with security and authorities. Now, in several sports, Russians and Belarusians haven't been able to play under their country's flags. Players from both these 2 countries are competing under a neutral white flag during the Open, but they were banned from playing altogether. Spectators were initially permitted to bring Russian and Belarusian flags as long as they didn't cause disruption, but that decision was reversed after fans displayed a Russian flag during a match between the Ukraine's Katerina Bandel and Russian Kamila Rakhimova. So here's the thing. It's another flip-flop decision similar to the rainbow flag and rainbow clothing at the World Cup, where the host country, Qatar, had in fact agreed that there wouldn't be a problem, only to end up backtracking out of fear of these fans being attacked by more hardline members. It seems apparent, though, that the more hardline members in this case are the ones trying to do the attacking and talking about the glory of Russia. I'm actually happy with the decision of the authorities to instill this ban. They should never have wavered on it in the first place. And this is always going to be a problem because, politics and sports are always going to mix. And there's nothing that can really be done about it except for, strong decisions to be taken and backed more than anything else. So it is what it is. Also about to give you a little bit of... I'm also going to give you some doubles updates because we have some interesting stuff going on here in the men's doubles and the mixed doubles too. So so Britain's leading doubles specialist Neil Skupski was knocked out of both his doubles events. His Dutch partner Wesley Koolhof was stunned by the Aussie hopefuls Rinky Hijikata and Jason Kubler in the quarterfinals of the doubles tournament, the men's doubles tournament. And those time, the top seeds, of course, were beaten by the Australian wildcard 6-3, 6-1. And then in the mixed doubles semi-finals with his American partner Desiree Kwarchek, he went down 6-7, 7-6, 10-6 in a very tight, hard-fought match to the Indian duo Sania Mirza and Rohan Bopanna. So in what should probably be her last major tournament before retiring, Sania Mirza could end up with another major tournament, which will certainly delight many Indian fans. I know that if she does progress to the final, that will be watched on the same day as the men's singles final, if memory serves me right. So we will see. And of course, Skupski had been hoping to reach back-to-back Grand Slam finals with his Dutch partner after finishing runners-up at the 2022 US Open. On a personal level, was just sluggish. Didn't know if it was from a late evening the night before after the mixed doubles. Didn't feel right on the court. It's very disappointing because we've been playing really well. The mixed doubles was on pretty quick after the men's, just over an hour. It's one of those things. Came down to a match tiebreak again. I thought we could have made a lot more returns. Hijikata and Kubler playing their first tournament as a partnership, and maybe there is a hope that they could emulate Thanasis Kokkinakis and Nick Kyrgios in winning the men's doubles in front of their home supporters. And of course, they will take on the 8 seeds, Marcel Granollers of Spain and Horacio Zeballos of Argentina in the last 4. Skupski and Krauchek have, of course, won the past 2 mixed doubles titles, but never reached the finals at Melbourne Park. So, just going to take a look at the results, of course, and we will share the tab with you right now. Confirmation of the results from earlier games. We see the quarterfinals being decided. Sabalenka and Linette, of course, are to play in the first semi-final. And the other quarterfinal saw Azarenka beating Pegula convincingly and Rybakina dispatching Ostapenko. They will play in the second semi-final. Then, of course, we had the then, of course, we'll take a look at the men's singles. Djokovic, of course, powering past Rublev, and Tommy Paul outlasting Ben Shelton. Tsitsipas completely overcoming Lehecka, and Khachanov overcoming Korda. Looked to be a one-sided game, but in reality, it was anything but. It was only the wrist injury that made things even worse. And then, of course, we have mixed doubles that was on. Of course, the result of the well, this is actually the semi-finals of the mixed doubles in which Krauchek and Skupski lost. So Mir and Bopanna are in the final, and that should be played over the weekend. I'm sure that'll get a lot of views. And now we're going to go to what we can expect from the semi-finals, and for that, let's head over to tomorrow's order of play. So here we have the semi-final lineup for the men's doubles. An all-French and all-Polish, basically France versus Poland in one semi-final, and Australia versus a Spanish-Argentinian combination in the second semi-final. All eyes, of course, will be on these pairings. And then afterwards, we have the semi-finals of the women's singles with Rybakina coming up against Azarenka and Linette against Sabalenka. So we have 2 Belarusians, a Kazakh and a Pole. And there is still a chance for an all-Belarusian final, but obviously the Wimbledon champion and the 30-year-old Pole will have a lot to say about that. And these semi-finals obviously are going to be, well-contested affairs with all 4 of these ladies having played some very powerful tennis to get this far. And certainly the clash between the Wimbledon champion and the 2-time former Aussie Open champion will be a clash for the ages. Azarenka, of course, coming back into her own, but facing a very powerful opponent. Will she use her experience to outlast Rybakina, or will the Wimbledon champion keep going through? That is what we will find out when tomorrow's play commences. And of course, in the second semi-final, it will be a dream semi-final for Magda Linette up against Belarusian Sabalenka. And hopefully she will hope to continue her dream run. But Sabalenka also is a lady on a mission. She's no stranger to Grand Slam semi-finals herself, having played in more of a few. So does she? It might be that she might have enough up in her sleeve to outlast her opponent. And then, of course, we have the men's semi-finals between of course, between Djokovic and Tommy Paul and Tsitsipas and Khachanov. Tsitsipas obviously has come into his own well in this tournament and certainly feels at home in Melbourne. And like Djokovic, he's gotten better as the tournament has gone on. And it's very hard to look beyond Tsitsipas-Djokovic final with both of those the two highest seeds remaining in the tournament. But this tournament has thrown up a few surprises. I would expect that it would be a Tsitsipas-Djokovic final with both of these two continuing to play some excellent tennis and living up to their reputations. But they are going to be tough games against Paul and Khachanov, respectively, and they should look to prepare themselves. And of course, we will provide you details of the results in our next installment on this channel. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for joining in. Tomorrow, of course, is Australia Day, or today, rather, in Australia is Australia Day, the 26th of January, which also happens to be Republic Day in India. So both countries sharing an important day. And I wonder if the tennis from Melbourne will be a reflection of that level of quality. Certainly the Aussies who will be on play, Hijikata and Kubler, will be hoping to provide a special treat for their fans. But this has been a very interesting, almost open, and I would say definitely remarkable Australian Open. And it's another reminder that when you go into a Grand Slam final, reputations count for nothing. Form goes out the window. It's how you perform on the day that counts, and how you prepare before that day that will determine how far you go in the tournament. And so where a lot of top players have fallen by the wayside, so far all four semi-finalists, I would say, four semi-finalists on the men and the women deserve to be there. And they certainly prepared well, won all of the big moments, and they are good value for their passage to the semi-finals. And I'm sure that these matches will be well contested. We've got Hanno in the building, also the honorary Luton fan. Hello, good to see you as a subscriber. A masterclass by Djokovic, yes, and yeah, I know that you're sharing the hope for the final between Tsitsipas and Djokovic, and it could very well look to be that way. And it looks as though you're not a very big fan of Djokovic. And to be honest, I tolerate him. He's a fine player, but he's not necessarily my cup of tea. And that's sort of the way it is. So thank you to both of you for joining in. And I'm only sorry that we couldn't really offer you more. But of course, we are going to continue to talk more about the Australian Open later on this week. And of course, by Friday, when we do our next show, we should have the finalists in all tournaments decided. So Saturday and Sunday, of course, will be championship weekend, and we will certainly look forward to some of these games. And obviously, the timing of this Australian Open is not really in anyone's best interests. And with these matches set to play very, very early in the UK, in fact, in the middle of the night, I would say, and also not much later in South Africa, it's a bit difficult for a lot of you subscribers, a lot of you who've subscribed, to be able to watch live. So, if possible, we could try and provide a ball-by-ball match highlight, but it's always going to be difficult, of course, when we have this wonderful tournament clashing with the Premiership taking place right now and other football taking place right now. It sort of is what it is. But as someone who enjoys tennis, I'm always really happy to talk about it and provide some more updates on it. So thanks once again to all of you for joining in. A final reminder, as given in the ticker, like this video, subscribe to the channel, click the bell button for notifications. Follow Hanno Trollip on Instagram at Hanno_coach_corner. You can also catch him on Twitter at the rate of Hanno70830030. And there's really nothing much more to say except I'm looking forward to the semi-finals. I will certainly try and watch a few games if I can, but of course my work schedule dictates that might possibly not be the case. And of course, the fewer the matches there are, the earlier they will be. So whether or not I will have time to watch them will remain to be seen. But I can certainly try if I can. And if I can, we will certainly look to try and find time to give you some ball-by-ball coverage. If it's a little bit early, if it's a little bit later in the UK, at a better time in the morning in the UK, then maybe we can try and do that for sure. But once again, thank you all very much for joining in. Another reminder, like the video, subscribe, click the bell button. And it's always good to talk to you all and be in your company. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe, stay happy. Don't do anything that I wouldn't do or Hanno wouldn't do. For now, though, from the Coach's Corner, this is me, Mani Thangadurai, and I am out. Goodbye, peeps.